Welcome back to the Corner of One. I am the DM as always, and today I want to look at this. It's a video from Boomstick Gaming. I've been subscribed to him for quite a while. And his is about like which class fits your personal playstyle best. I don't know exactly what that means. I haven't seen this video yet. But I saw his short, and it seemed like he was kind of going over all of the different specializations for each of the classes. So I want to look at that. I want to see what is actually going on with each of them. We saw a little bit of it from the IGN stuff. Gonna admit, wasn't like super impressed or anything with the combat or anything. I said it was like I was cautiously interested in it. So, I mean, that's not to say that like the combat looked terrible or anything. Like it looked average. It didn't like look mediocre. It looked average for what I expect of action games nowadays. It definitely looked better than Inquisition. I can tell you that much. But yeah, so let's just go ahead and let's jump in and see what this is about.
You're about to start a Gigando RPG, and you're picking the perfect class right on your first go. No 20 hours in regrets that you didn't go that other class instead. I'm Alex, and I was able to get all of my fingers on Dragon Age the Veilguard, so I'm going to break down and find which class fits your personal playstyle preferences the best. I'll get into the gritty differences between the Mage.
So hang on. I said I wanted to see what the character creator was. And we've never really seen this screen. In fact, I don't think we've ever seen this screen. So let's see. We've got the lineage, which is just your race. We got appearance, pretty standard. Your class, your faction, your playstyle. Finalize, and then summary. Now, see, I heard that you could set the world state in the character creation, and I don't see anything about that up here, unless that's maybe under finalize or playstyle. I don't know, but not looking great.
Dragon Age the Veilguard. So I'm going to break down and find which class fits your personal playstyle preferences the best.
So let's see. Past adventures, the Inquisition. Maybe that's just setting up like the Inquisition. This right here is probably faction, unless backstory is supposed to be the faction. But then, like, why is it called backstory here and not faction?
I'll get into the gritty differences between the Mage, Warrior, and Rogue, their subclass specializations, compare how each stack up to other RPGs that you've maybe played before, and demonstrate some of their more unique techniques that you're likely not going to see anywhere else yet. I have other purple-hued content planned for Veilguard, so stick around if you're into Dragon Age. Okay, first up, the Mage, which has an entirely new playstyle that incentivizes you to flow back and forth between distance and close-range combat. The majority of its active abilities are elementally imbued and often deal area of effect damage. Directly compared to 2014's Dragon Age...
I'm going to admit, just right out the gate, I don't like that. Mages are not frontline fighters. They shouldn't be in melee. They are exceedingly squishy, so I don't like that just right out the gate.
Age Inquisition, the Mage used to pretty much stand in place, pew pew, and wait for the fancy stuff to come off a cooldown. The Mage in Veilguard is a completely different interpretation of the class that is much more agile, more action-focused, and simply more fun to play, since there's a lot more depth to how you engage. Like how the Mage can now quick swap between their equipped staff and their other weapon, the dagger and orb. Being able to switch weapons on just one button press lets you weave combos together that bounce between two different weapon movesets and even element types, so you can kinda create your own custom combo strings. Looking at how just the staff works, its basic attack shoots out multiple ranged bolts which take on the elemental properties of the type of staff you have equipped. Its heavy attack has some cool stuff you can do with it, and its effect can be boosted by channeling mana into it, indicated on this meter. Releasing the charge shoots out an elemental energy cone in front of the Mage.
Here's my question, and maybe he'll answer it in a moment, is if I were to charge it up and then switch weapons and then switch back, does it keep that charge?
There's other options for popping those heavy attacks though, like jumping and triggering it to detonate the blast into the ground as a runic symbol that hits in a full circle around you. Or my favorite option is to trigger the heavy attack during a sprint, which detonates it faster and uses the momentum of the staff to propel you into a very necessary 720 spin. The staff also has a defensive bubble you can glob around you, and that absorbs a certain amount of damage until your mana depletes. Before I get to the mage's other weapon option, Factor is the sponsor of this video, and personally, I'm tired of all the time I lose drowning in dishes and cooking mechanisms. Factor has freed up a massive amount of my life during even the making of this very video, thanks to their chef-crafted meals that are ready to eat in 2 minutes. Not 20 minutes, 2 minutes. These meals are dietitian approved, fresh, and never frozen, which means they don't have to have a massive amount of unnecessary preservatives jammed into them. That is a key factor for me. There's over 35 different pre-made meals you can choose from every week that will magically arrive at your door, and all the dishes you'll need to dirty are maybe a fork, possibly a tiny sword. Stop swimming through all those dirty pots and pans and stuff. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code BoomstickGaming50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code BoomstickGaming50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. Thanks to Factor. Okay, the mage's other weapon option is the Orb and Dagger combo. The basic attacks will shoot out a medium-range projectile using the orb, and heavy attacks will use the close-range dagger instead. Hits with the orb build up an effect on the target called Arcane Mark. And guess what? Dagger attacks deal critical damage if the enemy has Arcane Mark. Ooh. Apply enough Arcane Marks with the orb though, and the effect turns into Arcane Bomb, which can be detonated with a dagger attack for a nice big ol' chunk of dead. Unlike the staff's bubble shield mechanic, you can instead block and parry attacks with the orb and dagger, giving the mage 2 entirely different defensive options. The mage's main long-range aimed attack is this projectile beam, which has questionable opinions on the pottery industry. Ha! The mage can quick swap weapons even while channeling this beam, and that's an easy way to pop the target with 2 entirely different element types. If you jump off a ledge or get the mage airborne, you can actually temporarily float when you're shooting this beam. That can be used to hover for a moment while you aim, and can even chain into other attacks. The beam has some weight to it if you kind of swip it all around, which is just a random detail. When you're choosing between playing an elf, Canary, human, or dwarf, be aware that dwarves cannot be mages, since they're incapable of magic.
And that's been a thing since the beginning, and I'm glad they didn't change that here.
Now, after you've leveled up the mage enough, you'll be able to choose a specialization: the Deathcaller, Spellblade, or Evoker. Specializations are not entirely different classes, but each will give you access to a different ultimate attack, a few extra active abilities, and passives. You can freely refund your skill points and swap to different specializations whenever you want,
That's
by the
good.
way.
That's very good. That just gives players more choice, and one of the most popular mods in other games that have like this kind of tree is the ability to just re-roll your character. That was something that was a mod that was in Baldur's Gate 3, and they've recently added the ability to, it was always in with Withers, but there was also mods that make it even easier.
The Deathcaller specialization is somewhat similar to a Necromancer and can drain enemies' health to recuperate your own. They also get access to 2 beam attack upgrades, which lets them fire stronger blasts, and eventually get a passive that lets them sacrifice their own health in place of mana if it's depleted.
That's not really Necromancer, that's more Blood Mage, just without the blood. Other than the sacrificing your own health, which is all blood.
The Spellblade, on the other hand, focuses on electrical abilities with more of a close combat playstyle. This specialization enhances the dagger's moveset and extends some of its combos. If you want to build out a dagger-focused battle mage or something like a magic assassin, Spellblade is the way to go. The Evoker specialization focuses on cold damage and large area of effect spells that help to combo with other abilities. The Evoker spells tend to linger in the air and can even suck up groups of enemies, making this a great class for synergizing with other abilities to create big damage spikes. This specialization is also better suited for using the staff since it gets some extra combos for it. So overall, is the Mage your kind of thing? Well, here's another way to consider it. If you highly enjoyed the snappy magic combat in Hogwarts Legacy, you're going to love the Mage. If you're into the juggle between melee and throwing out magical signs in The Witcher, you might also like the Mage's playstyle.
That seems more like Spellblade.
Another magic-infused melee combat system was in Final Fantasy XVI, and if you like that, you're probably going to enjoy Veilguard's Mage. Now let's talk about the...
So overall, just pausing here, overall the Mage seems interesting. They're going for a completely different playstyle than like Inquisition and whatnot, which I don't know, right? Like it doesn't seem like you have to do all of the like quick swapping and everything. You probably don't have to actually use the dagger at all if you don't want to. So it seems like it's more just giving more options or whatever, but I am worried that if the game will effectively punish you for not using it, if that makes sense. And if it does punish you, that's going to be real bad, and that can make or break a class. And for me, if it's going to punish me for not using it, that's going to mean that I'm probably never going to play a Mage. However, if it's just like another option and I don't feel like the game is punishing me for not using it, then I honestly might play a Mage.
The Warrior. This class focuses on the fundamentals of combat, high physical damage output, high damage absorption, and can provide passive buffs to the entire team, or draw aggro by passive-aggressively taunting enemies' lifestyle choices. Compared to Dragon Age Inquisition, the Warrior class from that was somewhat similar in concept, but Veilguard has cranked up its mobility, spectacle, and depth to...
Increased mobility is something I expect from all these classes because this is an action game. If you don't have ways of just being extremely mobile in action games, especially ones like this, the class is going to feel like shit. The class is going to feel terrible. No one's going to want to play it.
Like 300%. The Warrior has two main weapon sets they can switch between, a one-handed blade plus shield, or a large two-handed weapon. Similar to what the Mage can do, the Warrior can also quick swap between their weapon sets to form combo strings that flow between both movesets. The single-handed set has faster attacks and shield bashes, where the two-handed is slower, but its basic and heavy attacks can be charged while moving to increase their effect. The Warrior's shield, however, can always be accessed for ranged attacks, which you can Steve Roger by tapping the ranged attack button, or precision aim it if you hold it. Some upgrades for the shield let it bounce around and hit multiple targets, or be used as an explosive frisbee.
Can I combine the explosive frisbee with the bounces? Because if I can combine frisbee shield with explosive shield and get an exploding frisbee shield, that's gonna be pretty fucking badass. I'm not gonna lie. That would actually make me really hyped to play a Warrior.
Either weapon set, the Warrior will always have access to a block and parry mechanic. Now, before I get into the Warrior specializations, I want to explain something I noticed in the paused combat view. This will apply to every class. When highlighting an enemy, any abilities that target their weakness will have a convenient spiky green arrow coming off of them, so you can easily know which ones exploit their weakness. Also, picking abilities that say combo opportunity will then show a direct arrowed path to other abilities that...
This is a universal thing. This is just a game mechanic. This applies to all classes.
That synergize and create team combos. If you're not into the tactical pausing of action, though, you can also shortcut to any of these abilities during combat. To the left or right of triggering your own abilities, you can see you can also activate your teammates' abilities instantly with no pausing. Same thing on PC with...
The thing I noticed there though is in order to trigger them, you would have to take your hand off your movement button, off the movement stick, in order to press the D-pad. Don't like that.
Left control being the default modifier key. Just wanted to share that. But now the warrior specializations. The champion, reaper, and slayer. The champion relies mostly on fire damage and can use that element to provide buffs to the team. This specialization primarily focuses on using the shield, improving the perfect parry defense, and gaining an upgrade that allows the shield to absorb normally unblockable hits.
That's good. That's really, really cool. That gives you, I don't want to just say more options, but it makes it so that there's more counterplay.
The Reaper specialization focuses on inflicting necrotic damage and can drain the life of their target to power their own. This is the risk-reward specialization that balances health sacrifice and health gain to increase the warrior's outgoing potency. The Slayer is focused on good old-fashioned physical damage and specializes in the two-handed weapon, improving AoE. Its core moveset and speed. The Slayer can also charge the two-handed attacks even further, which are clearly highly effective against empty space. Okay. So the warrior class, is this your thing?
So
let's compare to other games. Really, if you like the brute pace and weapon throwing antics of modern God of War, you're likely going to enjoy the warrior. Similar to the melee classes in Dragon's Dogma 2, combat with the warrior is going to feel somewhat familiar. Or if you just prefer a less chaotic and more deliberate approach to combat like Elden Ring, those core fundamentals of battle will give you an advantage with Veilguard's warrior.
I would say Elden Ring combat can be very chaotic at times, especially when you get like really large bosses that you can't fucking see.
Now let's take a look at the rogue. This highly agile class focuses on quick burst damage, multi-hit dual-wield attacks, traps, and ranged precision with their bow. Rogues tend to start salivating when the term DPS is brought up in casual conversation. Going back to Inquisition, that plays a lot slower. You have much less mobility, and a rogue mostly relies on doing one specific rotation of abilities over and over and over and over.
So he talks about like the lack of mobility. That was all of Inquisition. And it's not just Inquisition. Any of these like tactical RPGs, that's what the combat's like. Usually mobility isn't very high on the list. Hang on, all right. But yeah, that is just the thing of like tactical RPGs is generally they don't have like a super ton of mobility, and if there's any mobility at all, right?
In Veilguard, the rogue has gone full-on ninja Legolas assassin, capable of all kinds of different ways to approach combat. Unlike the mage and warrior, though, the rogue has one weapon set, the dual blades, and its bow is always available mapped to the ranged attack button. No weapon swapping mechanic to worry about with the rogue. The dual blades moveset has a lot of depth to it, though, more so than any of the other single weapon types. You can also use these to block and parry with the rogue.
I don't like that one of the classes just actively forgoes one of the mechanics, like one of the main mechanics of the classes, which is weapon swapping. I would like to be able to swap just to the bow and have an entirely different moveset versus the dual daggers. I don't like this idea that, no, you can only use the bow with one button and there's not a whole lot of depth to it. And the daggers are another button and there's not a whole lot of depth to it, right? We saw with the warrior and the mage, swapping to a different weapon, it completely changes up your playstyle. Whereas with the rogue, you can't change your playstyle. This is your playstyle. If you want to use the bow, you have to just hit the ranged attack button and nothing else. You're not allowed to have any like cool combos or anything that you could do between the two. I don't like that. That's really bad. That means that there's no combination of skills that you can do. There's no rotations that you can customize. This is a bad design.
Using the bow, you can do a quick shot with just a tap, you can trigger it seamlessly out of a dodge, or shoot it out of midair. Holding the input lets you manually aim to line up, shoot it out of
What is this fucking animation? Bro.
Midair. Holding the input.
What is that animation? The little fucking feet twirl? What the fuck is that shit? What? That's bad. That's terrible. There should be no feet movement. He should be in the air. You should pull it, fire it. The feet should stay still. That is so bad.
It lets you manually aim to line up ideally headshots. There is an upgrade you can get that incentivizes leg shots, though. Another option gives you an evasive blast out of aiming to give you kind of like an escape if someone gets too close. Arrows for the rogue are not a finite resource, and they simply come back over time automatically.
No, that is a finite resource. It's a recharging finite resource. That's what that is. Because you can run out, full stop, you can run out. And then you have to wait. That's no different from just being able to run out and having to go and find some that are conspicuously located throughout the level for some stupid reason, right? That's the only difference is now they just magically reform, which is also very stupid because it's not a magic class. I don't know. I just find that really stupid. Don't call it don't say that it's not a finite resource when it absolutely is a finite resource.
The primary ranged attacks of any of the classes are best used to break through barriers, which are the blue sections that sometimes cover enemy health gauges. Instead, some enemies will have yellow gauges protecting their health, which is counted as armor, and that can be easily chewed through with a heavy attack. Now specializations for the rogue. The saboteur, duelist.
I don't know. So he says they can be easily chewed through, but like this entire clip, it doesn't look like they're easily chewed through. If you're gonna say that they can be easily chewed through with heavy attacks, you want to show us clips of you using one heavy attack and a large portion of it just vanishing. Right, like watch the gauge right up here,
which is counted as armor, and that can be easily chewed through with a heavy attack.
These are a lot of different attacks.
Now specializations for the
and like that's like a good 2-3 seconds of constant attacking to chew through that. That's not easily chewed through. That's being chewed through certainly, but it's not easily chewed through.
The rogue, the saboteur, duelist, and veil ranger. The saboteur focuses on explosives and traps to open up more of a tactical playstyle. It also makes some of your bow attacks able to hit in an area of effect or splinter into multiple targets. Oh, and the saboteur can use this massive cannon that they pull out of somewhere. The duelist specialization is all about fast multi-hit strikes and becoming a flurry of death, with a dash of necrosis. The duelist gets extended combo options for the dual blades if you're seeking even deeper melee combat depth. And the Veil Ranger is going to cater to more of a long-range playstyle, improving the capabilities of the bow. If you prefer hanging back from relative safety and overseeing the battlefield, the sniper-like playstyle of the Veil Ranger might be your thing.
And see, here's where the issue comes in. Is in order to have more depth with the melee combat with Rogue, you have to choose, what the fuck was it called? The Duelist specialization. Otherwise, it's going to be shallow. I mean, he said it himself. If you want more depth with the daggers, you have to choose the Duelist. And then if you want more depth with the bow, you have to choose the Veil Ranger. And then the third specialization just nixes your bow and your dagger for a fucking cannon and some traps and a fucking a ballista fucking thing that didn't even seem all that useful. I'm gonna be honest. It seemed pretty fucking weak. This is an issue. I'm saying that right now. This is a massive issue for the Rogue. The Rogue is going to feel extremely shallow until you get one of those other two specializations, and no one's going to choose the Saboteur. No one. Because that nixes your dagger and your bow and replaces them with something else entirely, to the point where you use a cannon. Why doesn't it give your bow explosive shots and give your daggers the ability to be poisoned? or the ability to combo your dagger attacks into throwing out traps and bombs. Like, it doesn't enhance either of the other two playstyles. It just outright nixes them for an entirely different playstyle. And if you want to get more depth with either of the other playstyles, you have to intentionally choose one of the other two. Whereas with the mage and the warrior, you have that depth already with being able to swap between the two and having unique combos for both of them, and then adding extra bits to the already in-depth playstyle of the other two weapons. The rogue is bad. The rogue is terrible.
Alright, so are you picking the rogue? If you've enjoyed the combat feel of the last few mainline Assassin's Creeds, you're going to also enjoy the rogue.
Well, guess what? I didn't. I hated the combat of the last few Assassin's Creed, especially Odyssey that he just showed. And the main reason why I hated it is because in Assassin's Creed, every game, and this is the main thing that made me hate Odyssey, is in all the other Assassin's Creed games, if I dive off a fucking building and stab someone in the fucking throat, they bleed out and die. But then in Odyssey, if I dive down on a completely unaware enemy and stab their throat, they just shove me off them and act like I didn't just fucking go for their jugular. I hated Assassin's Creed, the latest Assassin's Creed games. And the Viking game did the exact same pitfalls where I stab someone in the fucking throat and nothing happens.
If you are into the style of Greedfall, you might also vibe with the rogue.
Greedfall
or if you really just like the
snappy,
fast-paced carnage of Diablo 4, you might be a rogue.
Well, hey, guess what? I fucking hate Diablo 4, and I think that it's terrible, and it released terrible, and it's still terrible. Not to say that it's like the worst thing ever. Like, it's decent. You know, like Jazarus was saying, it's okay. You know, it's acceptable, but it doesn't feel good. And that's not what he said. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look like it's fun to play or anything like that.
Alright, that's all the class options in Veilguard, and put your vote down in the comments the class that fits your personal playstyle. Then we can analyze who's the most common and least common.
Rogue is going to be the least common because it's super shallow and boring. The Mage is probably going to be the second most common because it's completely different from Inquisition, but still looks like it's going to be decently fun to play. And the Warrior is going to be the most fun because it's the Warrior and everyone loves playing Warriors. It's not impossible to fuck up a Warrior, just look at Inquisition, but it's definitely difficult to fuck up the Warrior.
This is very scientific. Now, after you spend an awkward amount of time in the character creator, you'll be presented with one last thing to consider, picking between the 6 faction options. Your choice will increase your reputation gain with that specific faction, improve your damage versus certain enemy types, and also give your character an important passive bonus. Picking Grey Warden will slightly raise your base defense and health.
Okay, and increase against that. Okay, that makes sense.
A good warrior choice for extra tankiness, or to slightly reduce the risk of going a glass cannon rogue or mage. Or does that defeat the purpose?
It does defeat the purpose. Mages and rogues aren't meant to be tanky. They're meant to deal high damage.
The Veil Jumpers get increased critical and weak point damage. Solid one.
That's going to be good for rogues.
To pick if you're specifically going crit chance focused or plan to pay attention to enemy weaknesses. Shadow Dragons will increase the regeneration of your class-specific resource. Faster regen of mana for the mage, arrows back a bit faster for the rogue, or a quicker refresh of the warrior's shield throw. Lords of Fortune makes it easier to initiate takedowns. Those are the high damage attacks you can trigger when the enemy is staggered.
Hang on, what did I say? Perform takedowns on enemies with slightly less effort. This is really bad description. With like slightly less effort. What the fuck does that mean? Is that a 2% boost? Is it a 5% boost? Is it a 10% boost? What is slightly less?
Mourn Watch will let you apply an additional stack of afflictions. If you're going with a build that's focused on inflicting status ailments, this is going to make it a bit more effective.
So Saboteur. That's really the only one that you're going to use. I guess maybe if you're going like a melee build for Mage, maybe it'll let you apply 2 of your arcane marks at once instead of 1.
The build that's focused on inflicting status ailments, this is going to make it a bit more effective. And aligning with the Antivin Crows will let you carry an additional potion.
That's the weakest one.
If you plan on getting absolutely pummeled, that's odd, but this does give you an extra health potion to chug.
The only one that will actually make any use of that are warriors. Because there are no, from what it looks down here, there are no mana potions or energy potions. So the only one that's going to be useful for are warriors, people who are intentionally going to be taking a lot of damage. So yeah, that's absolutely the worst one. They should have given that one like increased gold and rarity of item find. So like you find more gold and you have a higher chance of finding items that are higher quality, right? Or maybe a chance to upgrade.
That's all I have for you for now. But like I mentioned before, I have more content planned for Veilguard. So stay on my channel if you like what I do. Never leave. As always, I'm Alex. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your journey.
So yeah, at the end of the day, Rogue is the worst class. It has the most shallow combat and is going to be probably the worst performing as a result. Mage is probably going to be like the middle ground between overpowered and underpowered. Although that being said, magic typically in a Dragon Age game has been known to be the most overpowered. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially with like the ability to just linger in the air. I wonder how long that lasts. Like, does it deplete your mana or anything? He didn't really talk about that. And then warrior is going to be the most popular. Just because it's a warrior, right? So yeah, I was a lot more excited, and that's not really saying much considering I really wasn't that excited. I was a lot more excited before this video, but after it, yeah, the thing is, right, I like all of these games. I like all of these games. I don't like any of these games. Which, if that's the comparison, that means that the Rogue is going to be my least favorite. And I mean, that doesn't really surprise me because Rogue has always been my least favorite in any of these Dragon Age games. They've always felt very gimmicky, very, very niche, very bad, just overall. But I don't know, with the way that it's being described here, it feels like I'm going to like even the Dragon Age Inquisition Rogue more than this one. Which is not good because I think the Dragon Age Inquisition Rogue is like the worst one out of all of them. So, yeah. Honestly, I'm probably going to start off as a mage and play that and give that a shot just because I know I'm going to enjoy the warrior so much. And then after I play through with the mage, I'll probably play through with the warrior. And then I'll stomach through the rogue, to be honest. Oh god, yeah, these are not looking good. But you know, that's just my opinion, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the rogue will be the most overpowered busted thing in the game, and that's going to be the class that I enjoy the most. I highly doubt it, but maybe. Who knows? So yeah, anyways, that's all I have for this video. Thank you all for coming in my corner. I've been the DM as always. If you liked the video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. If you didn't like the video, hit the dislike. Leave a comment, let me know why. And I will see you all next time.